Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open with a priest reading the last rites of a death row inmate named Ivan. The hulking man is somehow allowed to watch this television show despite being convicted for killing the hostess. She was just one of his 24 victims, so Ivan is taken away to be executed and strapped into the electric chair. There's even a TV in here, go figure, and as Ivan palms down his little head, the warden Frank reads out his crimes. To put it in football terms, they include forcing his pigskin into multiple end zones so an executioner sends 2,000 volts running through his body. However, this Bronco is so strong that he brings down the power grid when his muscles overload the system or something. He kills the priest who was just minding his own business, then strangles the executioner, who's only a tiny woman having a nightmare. Susan wakes up beside her boyfriend complaining that all of these newspaper clippings about the serial killer is haunting her. David's like, "We talked about this, babe, I need them for my work," as he's writing a screenplay set in a prison and there's an execution scene. He says this like it's some fine art, but it's called Death House Dolls and is about female prisoners fighting in the showers. You might recognize the lead actress Sharon from such hits as the 30-foot alien woman from Your Anus or Mine, and she blames everyone else for her lack of real talent.
I'm innocent.
The director Robert can be found on a crane for half the overarching movie and says, "You're doing fine, but try to put some acting into it." When they go again, it's the pyrotechnics guy Rewire who screws up, but when he tries to fix it, he prematurely blows a blood squib all over Sharon. Meanwhile, at the diner, Frank watches a report about a riot at the prison 18 months ago, the night Ivan was executed. The prison was closed as a result, and there were rumors that Frank was abusing inmates, but those meals didn't look half bad. The next day, Susan and David arrive with a special effects dummy made up to look like Sharon and the same hairstyle as one another. They come across the janitor Russell, who asks if Dolly has anatomical body parts, so I think we're going to have to keep her locked up. Susan leaves David in the office when a breeze catches her fringe like a sail and carries her away to another wing of the prison. She finds a threatening note and a doll lynched by a cute little noose, while Ivan is shown peeping intensely at her mouth for some reason. Later, she comes across another generic letter beside the toilet in a cell, but she turns around for only a second and it's gone, so I think Ivan's coming up out of these crappers like Pennywise. Meanwhile, Sharon screws up another scene, so blames the extras and asks when's the last time these fellas even got laid. One guy says when's the last time Sharon didn't, so she threatens to call her agent or possibly the fire department for that sick burn. Frank confronts David about prying into the history of the prison while everyone's still calling him warden for some reason. Sharon has eyes for the wealthy older man, so the director's like, "Do you like the merchandise?" but he mustn't and walks off. The screenwriter is then told to bring the dummy to the execution chamber, and he does it, so he better get assistant credit as well. David accidentally fries a script because Rewire had the chair turned on, but they find one of Ivan's shoes, so immediately forget about almost just dying. While they make an eBay listing and try to find the matching pair, the warden uses the bathroom but experiences pupus interruptus. Ivan sets Karsh on fire with a blowtorch and burns him to a crisp, then drags him along the floor towards the basement. They watch Susan show up on set dressed like Sharon because she's here to do the stunts and got the job purely on merit. This actress can't stop taking L's as she says she gets paid for acting, not falling, so Susan says, "Oh, is that what you call it?" Once Sharon finishes getting accosted by the extras, Susan takes over and leaps off the third-floor balcony onto an airbag below. She receives the lowest score from her own boyfriend of all people, then moves on to filming Sharon's execution. Rewire is caught fondling her dummy, then accidentally melts the face off the thing, so I hope the cameras were rolling. The chair also overloaded the circuit, so I guess it wasn't Ivan's muscles, and as a security measure the cell doors have all locked. David and Susan must go to the boiler room and reset the auxiliary, which is a bunch of words that mean turn on the power. They descend into what seems like the bowels of hell until David falls down a hole into what smells like the sewer. Russell pops up with a hose and lifts the wet rider out of the hole that he says was built by the warden to keep Ivan inside. He then turns on the power as the couple leaves and is the only one who notices Frank's corpse, but just pretends like he didn't see anything. While Russell is dressed like a guard for his acting debut, Officer Callahan shows up asking to see the warden. He won't leave without answers, so Russell says he thinks he saw Frank downstairs and leads Detective Dimwit here all the way to the boiler room. The creep then uses the bathroom, but since we know Ivan travels through toilets, he comes bursting out of the room. Callahan, who probably thinks Russell just transformed into the Hulk, drops his gun and is beaten in a brutal display. Ivan then destroys the gun with a jackhammer and drives it into the officer's stomach while laughing maniacally alongside Russell. Upstairs, Sharon continues to show zero emotion, so Robert tells her to pretend she broke a nail or just discovered her leaked home video. She also seems to have got her job based solely on talent, while David takes a shower to wash off the dead dude's sewer funk. Susan joins him, and I swear that thing on her head just keeps getting bigger before we cut to the couple hanging out in the execution chamber. Later they filmed the close-ups of Sharon getting executed, but to make it realistic Robert told them to actually give her a slight shock. Sharon's angry as one might imagine because she wasn't warned in advance and slaps Russell of all people before storming off. She then grabs a bottle of booze from her room and stumbles back into the electric chair while everyone's left for the day. The actress laments to her melted face dummy that no producers call her nowadays except Bobby, but he only does it for the nookie. Trying to call him from the elevator phone to give him a piece of her mind, it suddenly activates and brings her down to the basement. Instead of just going back up, she walks around the dark area like, hello, is anybody there? But no, nobody was there. She finds Ivan sitting in the office watching TV, so screams and runs away, but he chases her at a blistering pace around the prison. Sharon runs into Russell and is like, thank God, but he reveals he's been in her room sniffing panties and tries to grab a fresh pair. She bottles him in the head and he falls off the catwalk, but before she can confirm the kill, Sharon is strangled to death by Ivan. The rest of the crew are out having dinner and Susan gets mistaken for Sharon by the waitress despite looking nothing like her. While the rest go back to the prison, David remains there to speak with the fry cook Fingers, who was Ivan's executioner. He's a bit lippy and goes on the biggest exposition dump, blaming himself for cranking up the wattage that blew the power grid. In other words, he caused all of this, but says the rumor is that Ivan survived and lives in the prison with his father Russell. Meanwhile, the director can't find Sharon for the shower scene, so he tells Susan to take off her clothes, but that isn't part of her contract. Robert tells her to get the wig from the dummy and will put it on one of these bimbos, then has them fight naked in the shower because art. Ivan enjoys watching through a glory hole that Bobby is all too familiar with, while Susan grabs the wig but completely misses seeing Sharon's corpse. She does, however, see another doll's head and writing on the wall in blood, so runs away and radios Rewire. He appears dead at first but is just trying out the device used for the hanging scene and what would be Sharon's character's third death. Ivan is heard on the other side of the radio and is dressed in the police officer's uniform to finish the job that the prop news started. He then taunts Susan as she finds a severed head in the photocopier and Robert strapped to the electric chair. She's unable to save him because a set of handcuffs prevents Susan from switching the machine off and old Bobby Boy gets fried. In struts Ivan, who grabs Susan's head, holds it near the dead body and says, "Look what I've done for you." He then lets her run around the prison because all of the doors connecting to outside are locked, so he easily just drags her back. Susan is placed in the chair and Ivan begins taunting her with a pair of scissors, but when asked why he's doing this, he says why not. His whole motivation is apparently to eat pieces of Susie's hair, but she sticks him in the leg with scissors before he has time to eat her fringe. She uses some of the pyrotechnics on the second floor, but those are useless against the defensive end, so she climbs to the third. She throws some flammable liquid at him before leaping off the balcony into a hamper, but knocks herself out and is carried back to the chair. Now she's handcuffed right back where she started when David uses some explosives from the film crew to blow open the front door. Ivan hears this, so he prepares Susan before going to hunt down the boyfriend, who discovers all of the carnage. David just walks right up to him thinking Ivan is a cop, but he beats him around the room just like he did the officer. However, he does all of this damage but then just walks away and leaves David alive because the plot armor is strong with this one. During this time, Susan is able to escape her cuffs because Ivan apparently used a set from the prop department instead of the real ones. She then rigs up a trap connecting jumper cables from the chair to the metal cell door, so when he returns, Susie electrocutes Ivan. Of course that doesn't kill him, so once she's placed the injured David in her car, Ivan punches a hole through the soft top. Susie speeds through the garage, but Ivan grabs David and pulls him out through the roof, so she crashes into some barrels. David jumps on a bike and rides straight at the maniac cop but gets clotheslined off and stuffed back through the car window. Susie ditches him and runs back into the basement, but Russell is waiting there with a weaponized blowtorch. He immediately puts it down to wrestle with the girl, but they tumble into the hole where Susie bonks Russ in the head with a rock. That's enough to finish him off, but Susan gets dragged out by Ivan, who doesn't acknowledge that his father was just killed at all. Either from the barrels of fuel in the garage or the bottle of methylated spirits, Ivan is highly flammable, so Susie grabs the blowtorch and sets him on fire. He falls into the sewers with the propane tanks, causing a massive explosion that presumably kills the killer. In case it doesn't, Susie seals him inside before we jump to her recovering at the hospital sometime later. Suddenly a badly burned Ivan enters dressed like a doctor and holds her down while eating one of his own ears. Just then Susan wakes up in the hospital beside a recovering David and was only having the first of many nightmares, I'm sure. And the movie ends.